All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the onocoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host. We're here most Monday through Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern, talking about coffee and, things about coffee. What's going on? How's it going? Hope your weekend was great. It's now Monday, the 14th of April, almost the middle of the month. Kent, how are you? Mom, how are you doing? So for most people here in the United States, today is kind of like your crunch day, right? Here in the United States, we have something called income tax, and all people, non-rich people have to pay taxes, right? So, and we have to pay a disproportionate share of taxes to support the federal government. Those taxes are typically due on April 15th. So today is the day of crunch for most everybody because, people tend to put it off and they've got to get their taxes in. So here in the United States, you have to file by tomorrow night right before midnight, 11:59 a.m. You have to file. So either you can do it electronically or you can just take it to the post office. If you take it to the post office, as long as you get it stamped, you're good to go, right? That's typically how it works. Kione, hello to you. Maku, how are you doing? Good to see you. So today I thought we would, what was it? On Saturday, I ended up, so as we were doing our live stream on Friday, I received a message from Hoon, and Hoon was like, hey, you want to be on my live stream and talk about tariffs? And I was like, sure, I'll talk about tariffs and coffee. Why not? Evidently, he intended it to be that day on Friday. And I remember saying this on the live stream, I guess he wants to do it tomorrow. And I was in my mind, it was the next day, Saturday. So when I messaged him Saturday morning, I said, all right, I'm ready to go. He's like, actually, it's supposed to be yesterday. I was like, oh, wow. And he's like, well, we can do it anyway. I was like, all right, let's do it. So, but it made me think a little bit more about the cost of coffee. And then this morning, most every Monday morning, I'll sit down and look at the offering sheets and the different companies we work with to source coffee that we might need, and so I needed to get some more decaf. So I'm looking at their decaf. And I'm looking at our invoices, and I'm like, oh my gosh! Like, the last time we bought a bunch of decaf was back in October, at the very end of October. So bought a bunch of coffee then, bought a bunch of decaf. And looking at today's offering sheet, I was like, what in the? So right now, since October, the price of the decaf, and this is the same decaf we've been using for the last 6 months, right, has jumped 13%. And I was like, what in the world, right? And of course, if we look at our C market, let me see, where is this? Trading economics, here we go. So if we look here at our C market chart, we can see that we've seen quite a bit of increase. I mean, just I was purchasing coffee here. Let's say the decaf was here. And now this is the commodity price, right? So you'll see it's like, what's it? Let's say October 24th, $247.86. This is for the price of the C market. So this is what kind of determines everything. So 247, right? And now it has 247, and today we're at 359. So it's jumped a good $100, almost 247, 350. Yeah, so it's jumped. The C market has jumped over $100, and which means that. So if we do 249, so let's say 360 minus 249, that's $111. 249. Oh, 111. 111 divided by 249. So the price of the market has jumped up by 44.6%. I mean, it's been a crazy, crazy time, and you've probably noticed that in the amount of coffee you paid. And this is something that's affecting coffee worldwide, because this is the C market, and this is how they trade coffee for commodity coffees, and all of that pricing in the commodity sector affects the world of specialty, right? The specialty jumps commensurate with the C market in many respects. Craig, how are you? Top of the morning to you. Power Plant says this stuff is painful to look at. It's painful. but imagine you have to pay it. You're like, oh, this is painful, right? So we're paying. We all, and then at the end of the day, we all have to pay for this. Now, I don't know what really drives the future, because this is all futures, right? So it's futures market, and I'm not well versed enough in economics to know what really drives futures market. All I know is that we have to react to it, right? It's something that's happening external to us because we don't have, well, a lot of us don't necessarily have either the capitalization or the intestinal fortitude to withstand these kinds of swings. So you can buy futures at relatively with very little money down, and then you can make great profit should the price go up. But if the price goes down, you lose your shirt, right? Because at some point the money is due, and so I definitely do not have the intestinal fortitude to ever be in the futures market, because it could be very volatile, or in this case, over the last 6 months, it could be very richly rewarding. But you also, of course, in order to really make maximum advantage of that, you really have to be able to invest heavily in the futures, right? Power Plant says it's like watching a tsunami coming in from the, oh yeah, gosh, just like in that movie. What was that movie with Taya Leone, where she goes to see her father at the beach and they get crushed by the tsunami? Kind of like that. Greg says, I bought all my green coffee for 2025 in the fall of 2024 when Ethiopians and El Salvador's landed in the USA. Smart move. I tend not to buy too much forward coffee, at least lately. But so the price has gone up. So like I said, so we've seen now 40+%. Then we've seen, at least in the last couple of months, at least this one particular coffee that I'm using, it's actually 12.5%, right, is the price increase. So, but the problem is that at 12.5%, that's not a margin that I can absorb. So that's going to have to be translated, or that's going to have to be passed on to the end user. So to my wholesale customer, we will have to pass that on, raise the prices a little bit, and then in turn, they will probably have to raise their price to the guest, which, is troubling all the way around, because, it affects the consumer mostly. Craig says, however, I can hold all my coffee. What he's not telling you, it's a 10,000 square foot frozen warehouse. No, I'm just kidding about that. But so I was going through. I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about today, but then as I was going through my weekly offering sheets, I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. And then so now, and I was also looking to see have any of these tariffs caused any price fluctuation or announced tariffs. And looking at the offering sheets today, I did not see any change in pricing over the last week. Right. So if I look at last week if I look at the last 2 weeks worth of invoices, I'm not seeing any change yet. But I'm presuming that at some point when the tariffs do happen, they're going to be reflected in the price. I mean, there's just no way around. No one's going to absorb that, right? No importer is going to absorb that. Maybe some roaster might try to absorb it, but it's to your peril to do that. And it's always perilous because, if you absorb the cost and you reduce your margin, then that makes your whole operations tighter, which squeezes you there, which could force you into some kind of difficulty. And then if you raise the prices to compensate or to accommodate those tariffs, then your consumer may react by reducing their purchasing. So it's like, I don't see any good value from tariffs in this case, right? Like, especially in a market like coffee, where and a lot of times we in years past, and other parts of the world may have countries may have placed tariffs on certain products in order to stimulate industry within the country. However, unless we experience significantly more dramatic climate change here in North America, like if we can raise the greenhouse gases so that it really like creates a dome of carbon that will increase the temperature of like let's say for example here I'm in Maryland. If we can work it in such a way that we can create enough emissions so that we can create a bubble over the United States and especially over the Appalachian Mountains that will raise our general temperature from a temperate zone into more tropical climate. So if we can raise another 10 degrees average, then I think we can start to look at cultivating coffee on any scale, like let's say in the Appalachian Mountains. Then we can start to cut down trees and plant coffee in the Appalachian Mountains so that we can then have an industry. But we're as a nation, the United States is not really pushing too heavily yet. Well, maybe we will towards more containment of greenhouse gases. We've been working to get rid of greenhouse gases. We need to contain them more. We need to encourage more greenhouse gases so that we can spur on the production of coffee within the United States. Because as abundant as Hawaii may be, Hawaii certainly cannot supply the coffee demands of the entire United States. I don't think there's enough arable land that they can use for coffee production unless they convert the entire state of Hawaii into like coffee production, or maybe convert more. But if people are talking about maybe getting out of oranges, maybe they get out of oranges and make less orange juice and maybe more coffee, right? So just some thoughts. Oh yeah, the California power plant says there's a small producer in California. Yeah, we can. But California, are you going to take out? If you go out to the valleys, are you going to take and the big plains? Are you going to take out all the almond and put coffee in? I don't know. Maybe it could be. So, just something to keep in mind that as this thing moves forward, at least here if you're in the United States, you should expect rising coffee prices beyond the last year's worth of C market increases, right? So for example, if we look back at May 3rd, 2024, $200, $2 a pound essentially, right? Not bad. That's above the typical cost of production in most of Central America and a lot of parts of the world. So that's good, Amar. That's a good spot for. That's generally a good spot. I mean, we were a year ago we were 248. Then we were 235. The highest point was when right here, somewhere right around there. In February, we're at $4.36 a pound. Power plant says, but there's no future. But yes, but that's what I'm saying, that if we can engineer greater containment of greenhouse gases to raise the general temperature of our planet higher, right, then these temperate zones, where most of the United States within a temperate zone, right? These temperate zones can become more tropical, subtropical zones where you can grow coffee year round. This is what we should be working on. Not really. But I'm curious about, as we move forward, those of you who are not here in the United States, I don't think that the tariffs will play a role in your country's pricing of coffee, but I'll be curious to know, like, do you see much fluctuation in the prices of your coffee? Right? And I think that'll be more determined by depending on who you're buying coffee from, because there are some coffee roasters outside of the United States that are buying coffee from importers based in the United States. People like Cafe Imports and other companies. And I'm wondering, like, are they going to, and my understanding is that they will typically, let's say Cafe Imports, they bring their coffee to Minnesota or whatever warehouse they have in the United States, and then they'll ship it to points across the planet. Because it's in the United States, it's coming to the United States, there's a tariff on it. Depending on what country you're in, if it comes out of here, then maybe I don't know if that becomes then a U.S. based product. So it then, we'll get a tariff if you put retaliatory tariffs on products in the United States. Will that cause companies like, what's the name of the company I just said? Cafe Imports. Will it cause companies like Cafe Imports to start warehousing more in other parts of the world to avoid those problems? This is what I'm curious to know. Craig says Thomas Sweet Maria's was saying that Sweet Maria's prices for greens for home will get close to $10 a pound even before the tariff. Oh yeah. I'm not surprised. At the rate that we're going, it's pretty expensive, and and green and Sweet Maria's will have to make, of course, a margin on their green, even though they're selling you the raw green. They have to make a margin on that, right? And they're going to make a different margin on the stuff they're selling for home than they are for their coffee shrub side of the business, where they're selling to wholesale, right? If they're selling to coffee buyers, the coffee buyers are buying probably the either the half or the full export bags. So the handling of the coffee for Sweet Maria's is going to be a lot different than the home user who's going to be buying coffee at $1 at a pound at a time, right? So then they have to take that. They'll receive the coffee probably, in typical export sacks, about 152 pounds, and then they're going to break it down into. So if they get a wholesale buyer through their coffee shrub side, they can take that 152-pound bag, toss it on a pallet, and ship it away. Whereas if the home user wants to buy it, they got to take that bag, open it up, repackage it into however much the customers want, and so there's that cost. So they're gonna, but $10. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit. But I guess on the home side of things, if you're used to paying 16 plus a pound, maybe 10 is not so bad. But then again, you do have the expense of roasting. The time to learn that, and the investment in the equipment. Power Plant says ultimately coffee rust or some other blight will kill coffee long before Well, that's why we need to bring it to America. Raise our environmental temperatures 10 degrees. I think 10 degrees would be enough, right? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know those things, but we could do that. That would be one way around this issue. Dev, good morning to you. How are you doing? We're talking about the price of coffee. How's the price of coffee for you guys? I know you're the roaster. Dev's the head roaster of Elite Coffee in Honolulu, Hawaii. But are you involved very much in the purchasing of your green and the pricing? That's what we're talking about today. Talking about how, like today, I was looking at some of the offering sheets, and the price for the decaf that we're using has jumped since October 12.5%. And I was like, oh, which now will facilitate, not facilitate, now it demands like a question of like, do we need to readjust our pricing a little bit? Can we absorb that, or do we not absorb that? Maybe it won't be a direct 12% price increase, but maybe something somewhere in between. Kent says an email from a roaster I know showed the recent increase in price. In their case, averaging 2.5 times in 8 months due to Norwegian currency dropping versus the US dollar simultaneously. Oh God! In the past 8 months, if we look, if your Norwegian currency is devaluing compared to the US dollar, that's going to exacerbate it. But we can just see here, right? Like, look at this So let's say 8 months ago was, I don't know, August, right? So let's say August, let's go to almost here, August 16th, $2.52 a pound, right? Versus today, $3.58 a pound. So, I mean, that's a 358 to 2, let's see, 358. We'll just round it up. 358 minus 252, 106, 106 divided by 252. I mean, yeah, 42% increase in price. Like that's you just can't absorb that. That's just not possible to absorb. I mean, you could, I guess, and lose money, but yeah. So it's got this kind of perfect storm happening, right? We've got volatility and crazy and incredible increases in our C market, and then instability and volatility in our political scene, which is going to impact the economics of it all very heavily. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. The outlook is bleak. The outlook is down. The future is dim. Actually, the future seems orange, but very dim. And the light is obscured by this orange monstrosity. But we will continue to make coffee here on the live stream. Ken says, yes, I am. We recently had to adjust our pricing due to the rising. Yeah, gosh, man. And you've got the additional cost of having to ship it further from wherever it's being imported from. Like if you're working with import, like someone like in Ali's case, if they're working with, let's say, Cafe Imports going to bring their stuff into their warehouse, wherever that is, I think in Minneapolis, and then they're going to sell it to. So if I'm buying it here on the East Coast, I can call them up, be like, hey, put 10 bags on a pallet and ship it over to me, and that shipping is maybe $250. I can ship a pallet pretty much most anywhere on LTL freight, which means less than truckload freight, for relatively cheaper amounts of money. So it doesn't impact the per pound price of the green as heavily. But if you have to ship it, and I can get that in a couple days, whereas I guess in Ali's case, if you're in Hawaii, you've got to theoretically, you could fly it, right? You could put it on FedEx or something and fly it there, but that's very costly. Otherwise, you have to have a truck to the West Coast and then load it onto a container onto Matson and have it shipped to Hawaii, because Hawaii, since it is part of the United States, isn't, and oddly enough, is not a port of entry for most products. They have only U.S. based shipping lines can ship to Hawaii, so there's kind of a lock on that, and it's not necessarily the cheapest. You've got to ship it there. So, you guys have definitely more logistics than I can imagine. Dev says, we use Royal, and the best warehouse for us is in yes, okay. Yeah. So there's Royal West Coast, and there's Royal Coffee New York. And okay, gotcha. Parapon says, I like my specialty coffee a lot, but once the prices get beyond my threshold, I am fine transitioning to generic stuff. So I'm curious, with that in mind, what is that threshold for you, right? Where would you draw the line that you're like, okay, this is on whatever front that may be, this is too much, and I will now go. Are we talking you're going to go and buy Boss coffee, or one of the local brands? I'm curious to know. Let's make a little bit of coffee since we're here talking about coffee, and that's something to do. I will come up here. Whoa, there's some of the pictures that I shot over the weekend. That was not my intention to have there. What is going on here? There we go. Better. All right, good. So we have our setup here. I was using this camera. This past weekend, I was away in Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia area. I went to I don't know if you're familiar, but there's this woodworker, this famous kind of like woodworking furniture designer from the mid-century era by the name of George Nakashima, and his workshop and stuff is up outside of Pennsylvania. So I went there. I had an appointment to have a tour on Friday and was able to tour it's not a factory, it's more of a workshop, right? So they make these beautiful furniture, and I was able to tour that and had a really enjoyable time. And then yesterday I went up to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Naomi's going to say something like, you go to Pennsylvania a lot. And I'm like, now I'm thinking, yeah, I do go there a lot. It's kind of crazy. And went to Harrisburg because so on Friday on the way to Philadelphia, I stopped by a place called Hearn Hardwoods. And so we talked about this while we were on our live stream on Friday. And I ran into the owner, Rick, before he left, and he was like, "Hey," I was like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "We're going to do this artisan guitar show in Harrisburg." And I was like, "What do you mean artisan guitar show?" And so it's a guitar show for artisanal guitars. Like these are like some of the best guitars made around. So I was like, I'm curious to see that. So I went to go check it out, and like beautiful guitars. I know nothing about it. Like, I mean, this is beyond my level of comprehension, right? There's this one guy, Monteleone Guitars. Monteleone is the name of the guy, based in Long Island, New York. Evidently, he's one of the best guitar makers in America today. He had a guitar on display, $150,000. And I was like, oh my Lord, that's amazing. I mean, to my eye, it's a very beautiful guitar. And I was like, wow, $150,000. Amazing. Amazing. Naomi, how are you? I just talked about you, and suddenly you're here. Power Plant says, I would say that if the prices get beyond 3,000 Japanese yens for 200 grams, I will stop buying specialty. And yeah, I would just buy supermarket coffee. I hear you, man. I hear you. Kerry says, I've been buying more Thailand beans because of price. Last time I was in Hawaii, was surprised how much more expensive Molokai in Kauai has become. Coffee roasted in the U.S. Yeah, it's very. I mean, and you know, I mean, it's difficult because, like, for example, let's say if we're in Salvador, right? You're paying in most of Central America, you're paying your harvesters. Let's say the harvest part, right? The people are in the fields are picking the coffee. You're paying like in Nicaragua, for example, you're paying them by what I believe, if I remember correctly, it's called the arroba, right? The arroba is a particular unit of measurement, and you pay them by the arroba, and they bring the sacks in that they put all the green, the red, the cherries in, and you measure it by the arroba, and they make a note of that, and then they pay them, and it's a good salary, it's a decent salary there, like maybe per arroba, I think it's $1.25 arroba. And a good worker can, and I think the arroba is more or less 25 pounds. A worker in the peak of harvest, healthy, fast, efficient. I think they said he can do up to 800 pounds a day. Like, I mean, they can harvest quite a bit. So that's fairly decent money. At $8 a pound, you're getting $1.20. I'd say it's $1.25 a pound. $8 divided by 25. So that's 8 divided by 25. Is that right? 32 times 1.25. So $40. Is that right? Does that sound right? I think that sounds low. Anyway, so if let's say $40, yeah, $40. Let's say $40 a day versus in the state of Hawaii, like you've got to pay now American wages, and I thought one person told me they're paying like 20 plus 20, 28. I want to say someone told me it was $28 an hour for pickers in the state of Hawaii. And I was like, holy moly, like how can you make, but even let's say that's $40 a day, even if you're paying the person a minimum wage of, let's say, $15 an hour. Man, like it's way expensive to operate in Hawaii, way expensive. Naomi says, are these Costco guitars? Guitars of all sites, of all styles. If you want to look it up, it's called the Artisan Guitar Show, and they do have a website, and there's a lot of pictures. There's even a YouTube channel where they have they have concerts throughout the day by different musicians from around the country. None that I think are like, famous, but very accomplished musicians. Like this one guy I was just watching, Tim. I mean, amazing guitar talent. But you can check out the stuff. I mean, it's really, beautiful guitars. And the cheapest guitar was from a company called Fuchs that I saw, that I noted the cheapest because it was $800. And I was like, wow, $800 for a guitar. Definitely different than the Takamine or the Ibanez. But beautiful work. I mean, just amazing work. And really, I was there because I was curious to see like the workmanship and the craftsmanship, like just to see the kind of stuff they're doing. Robbie's with us. What's going on, Robbie? How are you? Good to see you. I'm moving and have not had much time. All right. Well, hopefully the move goes smoothly. Nobody says, how did you go from high coffee prices to guitars? Well, they're all high price. So there's that kind of correlation there, right? So we've gone from like high coffee to expensive coffee, expensive furniture, and now expensive guitars. So it all kind of balances out. But I was up at Hearn because I was buying koa wood, because they're the only source for koa that I know of here on the East Coast. No one says moving is so stressful. Oh yeah, moving is very stressful, but worth it. Okay, good. I hope it goes smoothly and quickly. Who's this guy walking across the lawn? Wearing is that my neighbor? I think he's wearing headphones. Anyway, Neri says, I went to PA once to a guitar store, and they had some kind of nude bike riding going on. Whoa. That's amazing. And Dev says, I have an acoustic Koa Taylor. Yeah, so this guy, this guy that I know, Rick Hearn, he owns Hearn Hardwoods. He evidently he works with a ranch. Not I don't think it's, I thought it was, Parker Ranch, but I don't think it's Parker Ranch. He works with a ranch on the Big Island to source their logs, and they bring it to Pennsylvania, and they mill it into soundboards for companies like Taylor or Paul Reed Smith or Martin or many. And they don't just do koa; they do a whole bunch of woods. It's something that I've only learned recently about, but I was like, oh wow, like soundboards and necks and fretboards. And I was talking to these other guys who were talking about like they make all the tooling for that kind of luthiering, the woodworking to make instruments called luthiers, right? And this company called what are they called? Stem something. They even had a kit for a tenor size ukulele for like, it's on clearance. It's like half price. So it's like $65. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to try that. I mean, I have my own, mostly Kamaka. Like I've known Chris Kamaka for many years, and I've always typically got my instrument. I haven't bought instruments recently. I mean, I bought them all back in the '90s. When they were affordable, right? Like for example, if I bought I have a 6-string Liliu tenor that I got from Chris back in 1992. That was a factory second. They used to release factory seconds fairly recently, and they were just blemishes on the finish. And I remember I got that for like $600, or maybe it was $400. I think the normal price was $600 at the time. And I was so stoked to have it. I've had that ever since. But man, like if you look at the prices today, I'm like, whoa, I can't afford that. Nobody says it wasn't amazing. Kids were watching with all the dingles and dangles. It wasn't. Oh, that's a very strange thing. Well, one time I was somewhat of a similar story. One of my good friends from Honolulu was visiting, Ray Rodriguez. He was out visiting, and my friend was having a party in Cincinnati. And I was like, let's go to Cincinnati because of this girl that I know is going to come. And she was coming in from St. Louis. And I was like, all right, let's go. I haven't seen her in a long time. And then we're driving out there, right? Me, my friend Ray, and my other friend Jerry, we're driving. We're like halfway there. We were, I think, past Pittsburgh. And the girl calls me and she's like, I'm not going to be able to go. I was like, what? You're coming. What am I going out there for? Forget it. I told the guys, she's not going to be there. Let's go home. So like, all right, let's go home. So, but instead of taking like 70 back, I decided to take Route 50, which is more of a regular kind of road rather than an interstate highway. And as we're driving back, so my friend Ray is like, he's a classic guitarist, really quite good. And we see this, for some reason, we see this bluegrass shop somewhere on 50, somewhere in the middle of West Virginia, right? And like, bluegrass, let's go check it out. So we wanted to check it out. So we pulled in and we go into this bluegrass music shop. And there's a bunch of guys there just jamming, like they're just jamming the bluegrass and they're just going at it. And we're like, what is going on here? This is amazing. Like, so we stayed there for like an hour just listening to music. And it was really, so not quite the dingles and dangles that you experienced in Pennsylvania, but your story just reminded me of this time, especially since we're talking about guitars and stuff. Robbie says, I think Brazil is the quiet winner with the whole tariff stuff going on. I think you're probably right. Vietnam won't sell any coffee to the U.S. Wait, are they saying they're not going to sell coffee? Or, I mean, because I imagine that, the countries themselves, you want to put a tariff on our product, well, that's up to you. We're still going to sell it to you. I said that, at least that would be my approach. Well, you want to tariff your own people, that's your problem. All right, so let's make a little bit of espresso since we're here. And so we've got our machine, as always. And I don't have the regular espresso in here. I just have a different coffee, some coffee that's been sitting on because I kind of ran out. Oops, got to plug it in. It's a problem with only having one outlet here. I'll turn that off. So how was your guys' weekend? Anything interesting happen? Keone says I have a Kamaka 8-string Lili Oud that I bought in 1979 for $7. Man. Wish I could have got that deal. That's a great deal. Oh, gotta get my towel. Make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, there we go. I did not scale this to that. That's all right. We're just going to go with the flow, right? So, again, falling on top, relatively even overall, right? Like, it's not too far to one end, so we don't really have to do too much to it. I just like to push it to the center and just to get a feel for, make sure that there's no low spots, if there's anything like that. I'm just going to drop this on here. So I'm curious, for all of you guys I know a lot of you guys are doing a lot of home equipment. One of the things that we talked about on Hoon's live stream that Hoon brought up was that because a lot of the products today are made for coffee, for home coffee, are made in China. We're talking now 100, potentially 145% tariff. How will that affect your purchasing of the products? Will you just buy? So if you've been, and he gave an example of, well, let me put this in here. He gave an example of a particular grinder, which I don't really recall the name, but a grinder that costs $400, and that potentially that grinder will cost $800 plus now. I guess he was like, I'm not sure exactly what his point was, but to me it was like, well, if you have a piece of equipment that you've been planning on for a long time, and it's the one you want, it's the one that fits everything, all your criteria, does that, just because it's now increased by 125%, does that mean you will necessarily not buy it, or will you? This is a little bit of a tight of a shot. So, does that mean you will not purchase the? Oh, darn it! Well, that's just not a good way to go. Robbie says, no, it'll be too expensive for the quality Vietnam coffee. For the quality that Vietnam coffee has, so I think more Vietnam coffee will go to Europe. Oh, okay, I hear you on that. But I mean, I'm thinking like, if the, but the, well, I mean, I guess that would mean that the buyers in America who normally have bought Vietnamese coffee will not buy it. I mean, that seems. I mean, 'cause that seems to be the real where the deciding factors. Which is back to my question about, if you're buying this grinder that you prepared for this grinder that was at 400% or $400, and now it's going to be $850. Are you still going to buy it, even though it is the perfect grinder for your situation or the ideal grinder for your situation? Would that stop you from purchasing that, or would you be forced into paying the extra money? It reminds me because I was at a dealership, a woodworking dealer on Friday, and in the cabinet making world, I should say, of woodworking, there's a device called the Lamello P2, and this is a biscuit type cutter that has very specialized. If you're making a lot of like kitchen cabinets and that kind of work, it's a beautiful tool to help you make your operations more efficient. But it's quite a pricey tool. It's $1,600. And the dealer that I was talking to on Friday, he was like, "Yeah, but I just got the notification from Lamello, and they're like, Monday the price goes from $1,600 to $1,875." I was like, "Wow!" And he was like, I've got a bunch of tools. I've got a bunch of their units in stock. And he was like, if you want to buy it, you should buy it now. And he's like, but the question is, if I make a social media post about it, I could sell them all, or I could potentially sell a few more. But do I do that, or do I not say anything and have inventory? Because who knows when they're going to be able to, he was like, I don't know when they're going to be able to resupply. Do I just not say anything, raise the price because they told us to, and that's just how it is. And I think that's what he ended up doing. But I was like, but the price, and that was a fairly significant price increase, by $275. 17% it was, 17% increase. And that was solely due to the tariffs by Lamello. So Power Plant says, I finally watched the HBO's Chernobyl series. Really, really good. It came out back in 2019 and may have been the best series of the day. Oh, yeah. That was very, very good. It's been a while since I watched it, but that was excellent. Or watching people play, gosh. I mean, they kind of like they didn't have much of a choice, I guess, and seeing how the cronyism was so rampant. Oh, yeah. Very, very similar to today. Peter's asking, what's happening today? I don't think nuclear fallout, but cronyism and, people putting their head in the sand, I think, is more what Power Plant's referring to. Malcolm says there's rarely a perfect grinder for a given situation without taking price into the equation. Good point. I mean, like, I guess for me, I kind of think of it, I'd say, like, in terms of, professional, the professional world, right? Like, if you have a particular need for a particular piece of equipment, and it's a mission critical piece of equipment, like, do you really have much choice? Like, if you, I'm presuming you do have the funding to buy it, like, in a professional situation, the equipment will help you to make money. So it pays, in many respects, it pays for itself over time. It just becomes longer for it to pay for itself. That's why I'm curious, in the world of home users, how does this how does this equation of tariffs play into your calculus for what you're going to be buying in the future? Like, do you before the prices increases come, do you rush out to buy them now to stock up and hopefully offset, the effect of tariffs? Robbie says, at least if you have to keep your money together a little bit. Yes, of course, of course. Powerplant says, I will always be a proponent of user change over equipment change. We can adapt our techniques to make things work. I agree. That was something that that Hoon and I touched on, because at one point he brought up about tempers. He said something about what temper do you use? And I said, well, actually I didn't have it at the time, but I use this one mostly. This one or this one. These are my two main. This is the old shop temper, but this is actually my personal temper. And I've been using this since I started. And I don't know, I always think that once you find nice quality, high quality tools, you don't really need to have other. There's always going to be cool and fancy, right? Always something new and interesting to try. But I don't know if you necessarily need to have those things. And even though there's new advancements in temper technology, I'm presuming there is, I really haven't paid that much attention. And I've got this, but that's not to say that I've only used this, right? Like, for example, do I still have this box here? Yeah. Okay, good. So I've, gone through the phase of trying different tempers. Right? Like this is my box of tempers here. So there's a lot, and these aren't even all, and actually these are more of, the majority of them are, of course, you can see, majority of them are Reg Barber tempers, right? But there's the old cheap La Marzocco one that used to come with the espresso machines. This is, we tend to, baristas of my generation tend to think this was a cheap, janky temper, but you know what? It actually works somewhat decently, even though it's plastic and kind of janky, but it works pretty well. And then there's one of the early ones from David Schomer, the Ergo temper from Vivace. This one is the classic. So this predates the Reg Barber, and then the Reg Barber is, of course, a classic one. This is from Cafe Latte I think it's Cafe Latte in Hong Kong, one of their early ones, rubberized. That's not faring very well with the age. This was a fancy, I forgot the name of this one, but this was fairly decent. But the problem is that a lot of these are just heavy, right? Heavy compared to the Reg, the standard Reg. This one here is kind of interesting. This one is actually the Ergo Packer. Thank you, Craig. This one is actually the temper, as you can see here, Tokyo, Japan, 2007. This was gifted to me by James Hoffman. This was the temper he used to win in Japan that year. This is the temper he used in the competition to win the World Barista Championship. So he was like, hey, I'm going to give this to you. All right, very good. Very good. And then this one is from Espresso Parts, but I liked it because it had this material that they used to make bowling balls. I thought it was cool. The only problem is that material, when you drill and thread it, it is not very good. So it actually snapped and just a little piece remains. So I can't really use that. What else do we have in here? We've got this one, which is, Craig, you might remember this one. I don't remember this one. That worked all right. This is kind of in the early days of where we had these convex tempers. But then the rest here are all different Reg Barbers. This is my personal one from many years ago that we had made when I had the shop made for Spro. This one has the C, I think it's called the C temper, right? Because it's got the conical rings plus this kind of beveled and flat here in the center. This is one that Reg made for me, just with my laser engraved with my initial on it. Oh, probably needs to be cleaned. C plus or C temper, something like that, C note. This one is one that was gifted when we were competing in the Mid-Atlantic regions in 2007. So there's quite a few tampers here. This was one of the shop tampers from our first Spro in Towson. So I would always have some shop tampers made with the actual logo on it of the shop, and just kind of fun for the baristas to use, because I didn't want to have a cheap tamper for the baristas, because if you have cheap tools, it's just not. If you have nice quality tools, working is a pleasure. Working is a pleasure. Karen says, "Is that your tamper?" Oh, C Ripple. That's what it is. C Ripple. Got it. Peter says he bought a croissant today for $9.66. Wow, man, that is a significant. Oh, and so speaking of expensive croissants, my croissant I don't think was that expensive. It was pricey, but not that expensive. A friend of mine several years ago opened a place called Curiosity Donuts outside of Philadelphia. So finally, on Saturday morning, I stayed at my cousin's house. So I was like, let's go to check out Curiosity. So I drove up there and finally got to him. It's been, gosh, I can't believe we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, it's been 10 years. 10 years, holy gosh. How did it take so long for me to come visit? But finally I was able to visit. Delicious donuts. Curiosity Donuts. But I gotta say, it was kind of expensive. Like I was like, I think a dozen donuts was like $47. Like, whoa. Coffee was pretty good though. The coffee was just brewed coffee, but very pleasant. Like I ended up getting, I got a 12-ounce coffee, and we're eating the donuts, and I was like, man, I'm gonna have some more. I need more coffee because I'm running out. So that was very enjoyable. And then he also has like bagels, a different style of bagel, more natural. He says naturally leavened, so there's a light tinge of like sourdough kind of sourness to it. And they also make croissants. The croissants were actually very good. I was like, all right, did a hell of a job. Hell of a job. Nobody says, how is the beveled one compared to flat? Is this beveled? That's not beveled as much. Like this one you're talking about, right? So these are the two. That's the best way to look at it. So the theory between the bevels, right? Like this one is these are C ripples, but this particular one has a bevel here, and then flat grooving there, where this one is kind of flat here in the center, but beveled in the grooving. The idea is that you're going to be pushing out. The idea is that it pushes the coffee to the edges of the basket, right? Because a lot of the channeling happens at the edge of the basket because people are not getting enough distribution. The theory is that it's going to compress and push out in all directions, which will help to reduce it. Now, I don't know if that really does that, because I have had definitely instances where I was using like this temper or any of these tempers where I've had some channeling, because a lot of it has to do with the way you actually physically distribute the coffee. This can only enhance it just a little bit. It can't. I don't think that this little bevel here will be able to compensate for gaps, for true gaps that are in your coffee bed. I don't think it'll compensate for that, but it just kind of helps, and it's a kind of a nice design. And this one was a little bit nicer because, as you can see here, it's fairly thin compared to this original. Like this is the original. Like this is, comparatively speaking, this is a battle technique. Let's see here. How much will, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder how much of a savings. And then this is like original Reg Barber, like 2003, 2002, 2003. This is L'Espro. So this was like closer to 2009, 2010, right? So if we look here, 368, we should probably switch this over to weight. 368 grams, whereas this one, you're saving 50 grams or so. So, and it is quite noticeable. Like I can feel the difference fairly apparent that this is a lighter tamper, so easier to wield. And then this one here, so 351. So that's about 15 grams lighter than the original. And this has a little bit of chamfering, but not as much reduction in the piston as this one, right? And what else do we have here? The other size that Reg has was this other shorter one, right? And this was in a beech or something like that, which I kind of like the white because these are bobinga wood, where this is, I think, a beech or maple. So they're 340, so 368 from this. So you're talking, 368, so almost 30 grams difference. So, but this one still has the old school full flat temper. So this is a lot heavier. If you were to pair this with this, you'd probably have a nicer, like this one right now is 311. If we were to swap them, and that's what I liked about the Reg stuff, is if you wanted to buy just the piston and update your temper, you could. I never really did that, but you could. So $298. So there's a good savings there, right? Craig says, high-end donuts are a trend. I kind of like my little donut bakery because their donuts are still they're not terribly fancy, but they are quite good. I'm like, all right, I like that. And Craig also says that convex also forgives slight errors in being level. Yes, that's true. Naomi says, I like a nice heavy temper. All yours. Yeah, these are all, I've always liked, robust tempers, right? I think that's, and I like the stainless, like there's been other ones. I don't know if I have any in this box. Oh yeah, well this one, the Vivace is all aluminum, but so it, 261, 3. So that there is a significant difference because you're using aluminum. Aluminum is a little bit more susceptible to damage, right? If you drop it or something, like if you drop it and it hits the edge, you could damage the edge. This one doesn't have much damage because we didn't really use this very heavily. Like you can see it has some use, but not as much as this one or this one. This was the shop temper too. And here's something, like this was the original shop temper from Hamden, and Hamden operated for 12 years. So this was used. I always like the idea of baristas buying their own tools. My baristas never bought their own tools. They would always use the shop temper. So this particular temper has made hundreds of thousands of shots, or tens of thousands of shots easily. And if we over 12 years, and if we look at this, we wipe it down. We don't really do much care for it. Like it's not like we refinish anything, but it's just this is wear from 12 years worth of use. And this is why I go back to if you buy nice quality tools, it does cost you more, but over the long run, this is all you need. And you've seen, I have a whole box of tempers that I never use. I never use any of them. I use these. So yeah, not bad. A little bit of rough here on the edge, but nothing sharp enough to hurt or cut yourself. But just Naomi says, high-end donuts are wasted on me. I like plain glazed. Plain glazed is always a nice one. If you were to give me those little donut minis. Like here in America, we have these donut minis, these little mini donuts that are coated with powdered sugar. If you gave me a bag of those and a glass of milk or a half gallon of milk, I would pound the hell out of it. Or actually, even if you gave me a Diet Coke, I'd pound the hell out of those things. All right. So a little bit about espresso, a little bit about tempers, not really temping, but tempers, and a lot about, the price of coffee. So I am curious to know what you guys think about all of that. If you have thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear more about it. But yeah, I guess that's good for today. We're going to be back again tomorrow with more of the coffee Q&A. Another week here in the wild. Peter says, I just use the back of a spoon to temp, and leveling adds character, and channeling adds character. Oh, I like that. Nothing wrong with using what you have with you. I could totally use this spoon and just kind of go around. I wonder if we would, speaking of which, that just reminded me, we'll do one more. We'll do that. We'll try that out. Let's clean this off. We're going to clean this off over here. Now that you mentioned that, Peter, let's see what kind of results can we get. If we were just to use a spoon, could we get nice results? Okay, so a little bit low here, so I'm just going to swoop it around. Right, I think this is where, now this is a little bit low. Like I feel like I wanted to put more coffee in it, but we're not going to because we are angry professionals here. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to take the spouts off so it doesn't like collapse on me. I'm going to put it down, and now we're going to use our spoon, and I'm just going to go around, trying not to lose. I think we should get fairly good results. And I'm saying that mainly because sometimes we've played around with like not tamping at all and have gotten nice results. Because the weight of the water, the pressure of the water is 135 psi. Oh, it's easy to like move the whole bed around. Like it's very fluid, like the bed is fluid. This is not the most efficient way to do this. And I feel like we have very little coffee in here. Although maybe I'm pressing too much. Now let's polish it. Like I'm a mason. A mason working concrete. Okay, that's fairly good, right? We're going to try that. All right, here we go. Here we go. Now we're going to pull the shot here. Flush your group. Oh, I forgot to put the spouts. So a little bit slow coming out of the left side spout, but nice and flowy. All right, that was pretty good. Let's go back over here. Oh, okay. Clean the station. Okay, that's not a bad looking shot. Okay, so we've got this here. Looks fairly decent. Let's look at our puck. See, here's why I'm also saying that, like, you know, sometimes I don't know if you really need to worry too much about tamping, more about distribution, because if we can see, I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the dispersion screen line in the puck. And there's fairly good resistance. You know, it's not as resistant as, because we just don't have as much coffee as I normally do, but there's our cookie. And fairly in good condition, like relatively dry, a little bit crumbly. It's too hot. But that's, I wouldn't, you know, if I had just been served this, it would not be a bad shot. Like I would not be that concerned about it. Like, oh, that looks pretty good. All right, let's try it. Not bad. Actually nice and rich and thick and good body. This particular shot doesn't have a lot of sweetness, a little bit of sweetness. So That's temping with a spoon. Peter always has, those Australians always have interesting things to talk about. Naomi says, I should know better to believe you. I know I should totally. We are not going to add more coffee because it's hella, yeah, we can't afford it anymore. And if I grind fine enough, says Naomi, and just use the impact leveler, I don't need the temp. Yeah, I do. I sometimes don't know if we really ever need the temp. As long as we get a nice bed made down, right? I think. But if you make a bed and you don't do any temping, I feel like you're missing out, right? Like, why make the bed if there's no temping? And that's where I'm going to leave you with today's thoughts. See, manual kitchen color. Very good, very good. Mackie, good morning to you. All right, well, sorry, Mackie, we're about to head out. So thanks for tuning in. Good to see all of you again, as always. Hope you have a wonderful week coming up. We'll be back in tomorrow with more of the Coffee Q&A. So until then, see you then.